Hello and welcome back to another video. I am so glad you're here. On this channel, I talk about news, controversies, and drama on the bookish side of the internet, and I certainly hope you'll stick around. Now, this Audra winner situation is just the gift that keeps on giving, at least for those of us who have become fixated on the whole thing. Guilty. As I alluded to in my previous video about her, I scripted, filmed, edited, and posted that in about 5 hours. And I know some of you are as invested in this as I am, but I wanted to wait until I had just a little more to say before I updated and made a part 3. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I will link my first 2 videos about her up here and down in the description. But all that said, here's part 3. Welcome to the world of Audra. So the last time we left off with her, she said she would be doing weekly updates on her TikTok. And we went through the first one she did, answering some of the questions people had asked, mostly regarding how is she going to fix her work, explaining about her team of artists, whatnot, all of that. So we are starting with her next update, which was posted on August 18th. And I know, shockingly, wasn't actually much of an update. So it says, weekly update 8/18/25, kind of gives like an overview, editor Q&A, and general update. So, have you hired an editor? I have found an editor outside of the fan base / book talk who has had no involvement with and no knowledge of the world of Guardian before release. I'll be working closely with her one-on-one for developmental copy and line editing. If you have any questions for her and how she intends to approach the project, she'll be doing a Q&A. Please leave your questions in the comments below for our new editor, Caitlin, to answer next week. And I have to say, I'm not trying to accuse her of anything, but it does feel quite serendipitous that she was so easily able to find an editor who had an immediate opening and wasn't at all familiar with her book, by which I mean it wasn't like someone in her audience offering to help. Just saying. You've been real quiet. What's going on? Behind the scenes, we've been making tons of positive changes. I spent a lot of time working on chapter 1 with the guidance and knowledge from both the creative team and my new editor. I just need a few more days to really give my all to pushing through and powering forward. We'll answer more questions later this week. Right now, I'm placing my focus and energy on editing and setting out a plan moving forward for how to best improve and strengthen my writing. Stay tuned, we have some exciting updates coming this week. Doesn't this sound exactly the same, though, as what she said before, where she's just kind of like vaguely alluding to making changes with her team? And then this just seems to be kind of like her general, like, last thing, send us your questions, yada yada. So yeah, not much. Here are a few of the comments that were left. 1, why do we need a Q&A? 2, why do you have one editor doing the job of 3+ editors? Why are you so focused on everything that is not writing the book? Oh my God, why does your editor need to do a Q&A? Just put your heads down and get the work done, no need to overcomplicate it. And someone replied to that, this has to be the most bizarre idea I've ever heard of an author doing. A Q&A? It is interesting because I feel like that's something you do to, like, you know, interact with your audience once you have a fan base. That is a cool thing to do. Or even if you're trying to, like, promote it, this would have been something that would have been cool, like, before all of the crash and burn. I don't know. It feels kind of weird at this point. It's like there are other things that you should be taking the time to focus on that aren't this. How come your writing was previously subpar, despite your book being reviewed by part of your idol's team and lots of editing done? How were some of those mistakes overlooked by the team, and did anybody make you aware of them or no? Someone else said it's important to mention the Hunger Games editor that's been mentioned wasn't an actual story editor in the books. She mainly dealt with marketing. So there's very much so the possibility that she also just sucked at giving directions. Okay, oh, didn't know that. It's definitely a shame. And I definitely think that Audra also was misleading in her talking about this editor from the Hunger Games. It's not exactly what she kind of portrayed it to be. And so I think that didn't really do her any favors at the end of it all. So the rest of the comments, pretty much the same. People asking why do we need a Q&A at all, asking about the editor's credentials, and just general expressions of frustration that nothing's really changing. Next on 8/24, she posted another video kind of rehashing what she's been saying, and I'm gonna play it and interject. Sorry if it's annoying.
I believe I've been improperly introduced to you. I'm a 22-year-old entrepreneur, writer, and naturalist.
Sorry to pop in so quick, but it's a little on the nose that she mentions that she's an entrepreneur before mentioning she's a writer. Just noting it.
Some of my favorite things are wolves, ecology, my dog, the ocean, and, of course, writing. You probably know me from that last one. In the past month or so, I have become known for what is literally my worst nightmare. So obviously we took some time to calm down and talk with the studio and make some plans, hire an editor.
Talk with the studio, hire an editor. Like, why is that not the number one thing? That should have always been the priority. Like, what?
So now, let me tell you exactly what my goal is, what my intentions are, and who I am. I'm a full-time author and founder of a creative studio with artists from across the world, all working to develop a literature-based multimedia series.
Is it really literature-based, though? Because the writing itself still feels like it's an afterthought.
Centered around the Zodiac-based fantasy world that I began developing when I was 12. I want my novels to be a blend of narrative prose and artistic storytelling. My chapters are written out like a normal fiction book, but there are also critical parts of the story that are told by illustration.
This sounds very cool in theory, but it's just way too much. Why are there so many graphics? This feels like the type of thing that would be really cool for a special edition after you've already proven you have a successful novel in a world that people are excited to read about. This just, I don't know. I don't like it.
Aim is to uphold artistic kinship, collaboration, imagination, and innovation. I am absolutely dedicated to pioneering a new avenue of publishing that equalizes the storytelling between both writers and artists. So how'd I get here? While the short answer is a couple of scholarships, there is a much larger story to be told. When I listed the pre-order for my debut novel, it instantly took off, even when I wasn't expecting to sell more than 100 copies at most. Instead of printing my books on demand, I contacted a large book printer that publishers use and ordered my stock of books to independently distribute.
Even though we already knew all that, it still makes me cringe, which is such a bad decision.
This allowed me to retain a significant portion of the profit made from a book sale, and I did all of this on a very small initial budget by pre-funding from the books themselves. I ended up selling thousands of copies of my debut within a matter of 3 months. Prior to its formal release, The Age of Scorpius had over 7,000 pre-orders. If you're wondering what I did with all that money, I turned it right back into my company. I established a creative studio, hiring a global team of artists of both contractors and employees aiming to further develop the series.
Now, what's wild to me, and honestly it makes so much sense, is that this was always her plan. She was always going to make this into a huge thing with artists and multimedia, whatever. I feel like when she talks about her global team of artists and all that, she thinks it sounds really impressive. But I really just see it as her continuing to not understand or care about the feedback she's been given. It really feels like despite her being told over and over again that none of the art matters to anyone, she's refusing to give it any credence, and it's very frustrating.
Starting in April, I was actively establishing my business and creative studio, managing finances, marketing, team managing, revising and editing, coordinating communications, and somehow also managing to pack and ship 7,000 bubble mailer pre-packages for the pre-orders before the books had even arrived to me. I delivered 5,000 highly anticipated brand new books to thousands of people all at once. I did everything I could to make the book the best version of itself that it could be. I hired both a developmental and a copy editor, and I ended up spending days straight in my cafe for months on end. So what went wrong, and why am I getting all this criticism? I realized a severe and critical error in my book. During the process of being thrown into the position as a business owner in April and May.
Do you mean a business owner of a business that no one asked or expected you to start? Because you weren't really thrown into it, you just kind of jumped without a parachute.
I was also in the final copy edit and proofing stages of the book. From the amount of shock and exhaustion I was going through, I failed to give that critical process my full attention and fell short without even realizing it until after the book was in people's hands and this all started. If you want to know more about what exactly went wrong, we have now posted the first revised chapter to Patreon for free. Anybody can access it. And we've also posted the editor notes from both April and May in comparison to the editor notes from our editor now. I've received a ton of amazing feedback. I've talked about this in other videos and how we're actually incorporating it. But we have literally gone through every corner of the internet and found the critique from our reader base and from the audience and put them in a document. And we're having discussions as a team. I'm having one-on-one discussions with my editor. We're incorporating that.
It's funny that she says this because truly the bulk of all the comments are telling her to step back from the art and the multimedia side of things to focus on the writing. And yet she's not doing that at all. So it's interesting that she's mentioning how much like they've really looked at everything people are saying and taken it to heart. Again, just an observation.
And I just wanted to say, like, genuinely, thank you so much for that feedback, because I am looking to improve as a writer, and I've been given this chance to improve as a writer, and I am super grateful for that, and I'm super grateful for the people who are willing to give us a second chance and give me a second chance as a writer. I love my team. I love my team, and I love what I do. It is every single thing to me. It is my entire heart and soul. 100% of my time, every waking hour and minute, goes to this. So let's try this one more time. My name is Audra Winter, and welcome to the World of Guardian.
All right, so again, I certainly didn't hear anything in that video that I didn't already know. There's just still way too much focus on the art and not enough on the text. And there were some encouraging comments, but a lot of people had the same sentiment that I did. I would love to hear more about the actual story instead of your business. Funny. It's difficult to find information about the plot or the main character beyond the basic Zodiac fantasy overview. And once you watch a couple YouTube videos breaking down the plot, you'll understand exactly why that is. It's a nonsensical ripoff of Divergent. I can't speak on that. I didn't read it. I have no plans to read it. So maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but that's what this person thinks. Literally anything besides talking about the content of the book every single time. We can agree on that. Still waiting for any info about the world itself. I'm tired about hearing about this corporation. I work in the industry and I'm just having a hard time maintaining any attention based off of this PR work. At this point, I've gone through the TikToks regarding plot, and there are a lot of inconsistencies alongside just general confusion on how the book had 4 editors previously, one from the Hunger Games. Releasing the previous editor notes seems like very odd and sloppy. Blame Audra. So yeah, it does seem like she's kind of just like passing the buck to the mysterious Hunger Games editor. And honestly, I'd be pretty pissed if that were me. This is a screenshot of one of the Snapchats that she had in the background of that video, which honestly, well, I'll let you come up with your own interpretation. It says, I'm experiencing more emotions right now than I ever have had before because I'm literally watching the beginning of my own rise to fame. Imagine being congratulated and recognized for your skill by everyone you speak to, being told you're an inspiration, that you're setting the path for future authors, that your work is so valuable, after being ignored for 10 years. Everything feels fake right now, and I feel like I'm just being dramatic or exaggerating things or manipulative, or I'm in a daze. I definitely can understand feeling overwhelmed by everything, but number one, she didn't do herself any favors by deciding to go with this whole like multimedia conglomerate situation. And 2, it just kind of proves that she's always been surrounded by yes men who don't tell her the truth. Oh, here's a side note. We can see that 47 copies have been sold at this point. So it's going up, but it's certainly not close to what it was the first time. So now we have, imagine being congratulated and recognized for your skill by everyone you speak to. Oof. Yeah, I fear this was part of the problem. Even the best writers in the world receive criticism. I'm sure you're very talented, but that statement implies you were either surrounded by yes men or people who simply don't understand the craft of storytelling. Which is the problem when the people she's surrounded by are her creative studio. This is my issue with the whole thing. I think the desire to be famous is much larger than your desire to tell an impactful story. It doesn't seem to me that passionate writers focus on the rise to fame aspect. They just focus on the writing, and it's usually enough to speak for itself. Props for finishing the book. That's more than what most people can say. But the image of pristine perfection you place upon your work sets a delusional precedent. And then they also attached the same Snapchat. I think this just drives home for me that her passion and drive isn't really for writing or crafting a meaningful story. It's for creating the next Divergent adjacent franchise, which is fine, but comes across as being inauthentic and also a huge turnoff for people who just want to read a good book. I agree, there's a lot under the surface here. So, it feels like everyone's concerns are still being disregarded. So now let's check on the update and then also the Q&A from 825. Sorry if the camera moved a little, I had to change the battery. Okay, so yeah, weekly Q&A, and it's got all of the information that's upcoming. I'm not gonna read that all because we're about to. So this is from the perspective of Caitlin, the editor. Why are you doing a Q&A? Audra should focus on writing the book. There's a divide between people who want answers and people who want Audra to step back from social media. Neither side is inherently right or wrong. There's no correct answer with handling this sort of viral situation. Everyone has different opinion. However, there are several people who have read the book and have questions about the steps Audra and I are taking during revision. I feel that consumers who purchase the book deserve answers given their obvious disappointment. She should have let one of her creative team members be in charge of her maintaining her emails. And that's not to be I'm mostly just saying she has so many people on her payroll, allegedly. One of them can answer emails for her and give answers to people having them, while Audra can work on her book. I don't know. Why does her editor need to do this? I just don't think this is necessary. How does it feel knowing she prioritized hiring 8 to 10 artists before an editor when the criticism was entirely about her writing? I gotta say, I do like that she didn't shy away from these tough questions. She wasn't just picking out the softballs or anything. After speaking with Audra and clarifying her goal for this project, it doesn't really bother me. She's taking a multimedia interdisciplinary approach, which is unusual. But the art and the text are two separate elements. She had both developmental and copy editors in addition to several artists. Both editors were hired before any of the artists were brought on board, but the editing was not sufficient. The art has since been largely put on hold while we focus on the text, since that's what customers were concerned about. Which is funny, because that does not seem to be what Audra is saying at all. What steps is this editor taking to avoid the previous editor's mistakes? If 2 former editors signed off on the previous edition and let it go to print despite its rough condition, what is this editor doing to make sure she doesn't make the same mistake? I have looked over the edits from both editors. While both editors' comments were correct, both the developmental and copy editor provided edits that were accepted into the manuscript. I feel like I just said the word edit so many times. Neither of them were nearly as thorough as they needed to be. Developmental and copy editing aside, there should have been a line edit. These issues are obvious given readers and my own confusion while reading the book. Okay, this isn't the end of that, but before I read the next one, I need to say how much I hate that this reads as though the blame is on the previous editors. Saying that the editors weren't thorough enough might be true, but at the end of the day, Audra is the one who said, yep, this is good to go to print. Very cool. So, I don't know. I just don't like that. We're starting with a thorough developmental pass. I've read the manuscript in full and provided both inline comments as well as thorough feedback on my thoughts on the manuscript. One of the major goals I have for this pass is establishing the world. In my first read-through, I was shocked by how many elements of the world building were dropped in without explanation. That's something the previous developmental editor should have picked up on. Audra has spent a lot of time world building, but that world is not built up for the reader. Other issues we'll be tackling are characterization and character arcs, the sequence of events, in-world logic, and the various systems of this society, magical, governmental, religious, etc. So yeah, she also has no idea what this book is about. And as a layman, I don't, I'm not involved in publishing. This seems like a lot of work that an editor isn't really supposed to be doing, or not isn't supposed to. It just feels outside of the job description. But I could totally be off base. It just feels like that's a lot of stuff to put on an editor when the editor is, I guess, just in my opinion, is there to assist with it all. The writer is the one in charge. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What fantasy books have you worked on in the past and which was your favorite? My current favorite is another project that I'm working on right now, though Age of Scorpius takes precedence, so I can't discuss it in depth. It's a political fantasy novel inspired by Chinese folklore. Okay. What happened with the feedback from the other editors? Will they be considered in the second edition? Feedback from the editors was implemented. The developmental editor simply did not provide thorough enough developmental feedback. Then with copy editing, you have to strike a balance between making changes and preserving the author's voice. The copy edit leaned toward the latter. This is a glaring issue because the prose was not up to snuff. There were words used incorrectly, sentences that don't flow, repetition, etc. The book needed more thorough developmental edits, substantial line edit, and then copy edits. Audra was given the go-ahead when the book was obviously not ready. I will be working with the 1.0 edition of this book as the base, using the edits the previous editors implemented. The overarching plot will remain the same, a quest plot, but every chapter is being reworked to improve the flow and logic of the narrative and better emphasize the characters. The story is ultimately character-driven, but the characters were not developed enough in the first edition. I'm sorry, but I have a really hard time believing that two separate editors would have let this book be published as it was. Unless, again, these are not actual professional editors that she had, and it was just, like, friends of hers. I don't know. It just really rubs me the wrong way how the former editors are, like, literally just being thrown under the bus. Well, not literally, but, you know. They're figuratively being thrown under the bus. Oh my god, I'm so annoying. Has the editor ever dealt with such a hefty project like this before? What made her want to take this on, and what's her zodiac sign? I've worked with both beginners and experienced authors, and have worked on much longer work, so I wouldn't even consider this particularly hefty. Well, I'm trying to save my comments for in between, but, like, I don't know if that's necessarily what this person was asking about hefty. This is hefty, sure, in length, but hefty in, like, responsibility attached and, like, eyes on the project. Anyways. This situation was brought to my attention by another author I've worked with who thought I'd be good for this project. I'm a big fan of fantasy and science fiction. My favorite book series of all time is the Broken Earth trilogy. So this setting, a post-apocalyptic version of Earth that has developed magic in place of technology with a focus on ecology, is fascinating to me. I'd love to see more speculative fiction where the environment plays a large role in the story. Also, I am a Taurus. Do you plan on having beta readers? I have planned the editing process around both beta readers and ARCs. At some point, we'll be looking for a pool of beta readers that includes people who have read the original book, as they can provide feedback on specific improvements. After receiving beta feedback, we'll implement another round of edits. Once we're further along in the process, there will be more information plus a schedule so readers know what to expect. If I purchased this book initially, I would be so pissed about all of this now. I'm glad it's happening now. But I feel like it's blatantly clear, and it's pretty much being admitted to, that Audra published an early draft that she had no business publishing. It was nowhere near ready. What are your editor's credentials and portfolio of prior edited works? I was curious and read Caitlin's Substack article called From Amateur to Author. Would Caitlin categorize Age of Scorpius as similar to those amateurish romantasy books named such as Powerless or Fourth Wing? Given the virality and amount of private information being shared right now, I'm not comfortable discussing myself. I realize that sounds like a cop-out, but I'm a private person to begin with and actively avoid social media. I hadn't even heard of Age of Scorpius until a client brought it to my attention. I'm not here for recognition. I'm here to give disappointed readers the novel they were promised. As far as my credentials go, I have multiple writing degrees, including both a technical writing degree and a Master of Fine Arts in Writing, rather than just creative writing. An MFA is the terminal degree for writing, although some universities offer PhDs, is required to teach at a collegiate level. During my studies, I worked directly under multiple award-winning authors, was awarded a mentorship with a publishing professional, and did 2 theses, one work of fiction, one work of nonfiction. I've also worked at an independent publishing house. I'm currently in the process of applying for PhD programs, though the academic landscape is so tenuous right now that I don't expect anything to come of it. I can't decide if I'm, like, okay with this or not. Obviously, no one is entitled to know this information about her. But if I was an editor and I was, like, proud of my work, I'd want people to know. And I know this isn't the case for everyone, but it would bring legitimacy to what she's saying if she shared that. And again, I know we are not entitled to this information, but all of this is just so vague, it seems kind of like it could potentially be made up. Age of Scorpius is a strange case. Audra has spent a lot of time building up the world where books like Powerless or Fourth Wing haven't. Audra has also spent a lot of time reading within the genre she is writing, and I would argue that Yaros at least has not. But coming up with an idea and fleshing out the world and then communicating that idea are 2 different skills. Understanding the elements of story and implementing them are 2 different skills. One of my goals in working with Audra on this manuscript is to bridge the gap between what she is trying to convey and what the reader is receiving. She's an expert in the world and understands the genre she's writing, but needs to work on distilling that all into a cohesive narrative. It doesn't matter how fleshed out a fantasy novel is if the reader doesn't understand it. It's sort of the inverse of Fourth Wing or Powerless in that regard. Readers who loved those titles really connected with the characters and the voice, while critics pointed out the flaws in the world. With Age of Scorpius, readers are unable to connect with the characters and the voice due to the prose, and then because of developmental issues, the world building does not come through. This is not cool. It's very unprofessional to be speaking poorly of other authors in this way. Audra hasn't mentioned any of her favorite fantasy series, like, why is that? And what is her proof that Rebecca Yarros hasn't read enough fantasy? This is just such a weird thing to say. Like, why is this a tangent she decided to go off on? It's just really in poor taste and adds literally nothing to this answer. Are you getting any sensitivity readers for diverse characters like Kaya? Secondly, will you be changing anything about Avia's place in the story? We will be getting sensitivity readers, not just for Kaya, but for multiple characters. Avia, I don't even remember if that's how I pronounced it 2 seconds ago, will receive some changes, as I am not satisfied with her place in the story and subsequent lack of arc. One of the goals I have for our developmental edits is fleshing out the characters and their arcs. Okay, good. Why only 1 editor rather than 3? I specialize in developmental and line editing. They're my bread and butter, and they're the most important steps for this draft. My approach to developmental editing actually encompasses an important step of copy editing, consistency and logic. Copy editing isn't just spelling and grammar and punctuation. It's looking for continuity errors, ensuring all the details are consistent and that the timeline makes sense. These are all steps I take while doing developmental edits because I'm the kind of reader that gets pulled out of the story if something is illogical, anachronistic, etc. I'm qualified to do all 3 kinds of editing, but I tend to avoid copy editing like the plague. It's tedious. I normally work with a certified copy editor who does not do developmental or line editing because of that. That said, this time there will be beta readers, art copies, and proofreaders involved with the process. We will be pulling in a certified copy editor once beta reader feedback has been implemented. As I've said before, I'm not a writer and I'm not in the publishing industry, so I could be completely off base. But I would think that having like 3 separate sets of eyes would be beneficial in making this the best book it could be. I don't know. It just seems like that would be extremely useful. So let's take a look at some comments, of course. Audra repeatedly called herself a prodigy and master of writing. She said this book was highly edited and by the same person as The Hunger Games. So many of her lies now don't match up with these excuses, and the way this is written screams like it's just Audra writing them. The team in the comments just make things worse. Wait for it. They never get it. Dragging other authors and editors is beyond poor taste. I absolutely hate the bad-mouthing of other authors that is happening here, as well as the bad-mouthing of the previous editors. The issue with this project is clearly Audra's writing, and no one else is to blame for her not honing her craft before undertaking this project. This Q&A did the opposite of bringing the reader's trust back. Ooh. The author is the only one who can work on her skill. Editors cannot make up for a lack of experience and practice. It's the editor's fault, even though Audra said she didn't implement their feedback because she was rushing to get the book released. Now she's saying she did implement it. The back and forth is ridiculous. This is just kind of embarrassing. Why are we blaming the editors and not the writing? Why are we bringing up Fourth Wing at all? What even is this? Caitlin was specifically asked about this in the last Q&A. You can check it. They are referring to her Substack post, a good read by the way, where she's talking about how capitalism affects the book industry. And then she posted an image of like that exact question and everything from the previous update. And also, this commenter, Orsi, just so happens to be one of Audra's team members. And she actually spammed this exact same thing to a lot of people who made similar comments. And to me, even with that like explanation, I think that should have just been glossed over. The editor didn't need to mention those books by name, even if the question did. And then someone says to that, this doesn't explain why she's making bold claims like Yarros doesn't read, which is a petty insult that didn't need to be included in what is supposed to be a professional discussion post. Y'all need PR people badly. And then Orsi comes back and says, as for that one, I have to admit I got confused too. So it's very understandable why all of you would think that way. She tried her best to be brief, which lacks all info. Her answer to me about this, Yarros posts her reading on Goodreads and reads mostly romance, not fantasy, which makes sense since she was a romance author first. Audra reads mostly fantasy, but reading within the genre doesn't mean you will be successful. Yarros may not keep her Goodreads up to date on every book she's ever read. I know I don't. You can't base her skill and reading experience off of social media, especially since it was only looked at to justify your point. I still don't think slander is necessary even if I dislike Fourth Wing and Powerless. But we don't know Audra reads because despite being asked literally dozens of times, she won't respond. So comparison is the thief of joy, and putting other authors down because they're successful is so unprofessional and a major turnoff from supporting y'all. That's just like, what a weird thing to say. I haven't updated Goodreads in like a year, and I swear I still read though. As she mentioned sometime earlier, her Patreon has a free tier with a lot of the information about updates and all of that. So posted on August 22nd, illustrator and project manager Elle Rose posted an update and a schedule. First, we have some art, obviously. Hello, it's Elle Rose, illustrator, project manager. We're banging away at the revisions. I think we'll have chapter 1 ready soon, and we're going to be standardizing our Patreon process more. Starting in September, we're aiming for 3 posts a week minimum. I say minimum because it might be more depending on what we have in a given week. Posts will be organized thusly. Tuesdays, writing updates. We'll talk about where we're at in the revisions for the Age of Scorpius, problems we're fixing, teasers for potential changes, a look at our process, etc. When we have chapters to share, not every week, this is the day we'll release them. Some weeks Tuesday will be beefy, other weeks it might just be a quick update. Updates will always be free, but some will have extra stuff just for paid members. The revised chapter 1 will be free to everyone. Thursdays, world building. We've done quite a bit of work on the world of Guardian as a whole, what it's like to live there, the different roles and social structures of each sign. We'll continue to share this type of content on Thursdays, including both art and lore, as well as a hint on where in the book series this may come up. Some updates will contain exclusive content for paid members. Saturdays, art updates. We've already been posting a lot of these, and we have lots more. Paid members will get 1 week early access as well as exclusive notes from the art team, process shots, and time-lapse videos. We plan to eventually reopen sketch requests as well, but they're on pause right now while we focus everything on the revision process. Wow! Keep a lookout for the revised chapter 1 soon, and thank you all for being here, Elle Rose. I just don't know who is wanting all of this, which I guess is evidenced by the fact that there are 555 total members of her Patreon, but only 8 of them are paid members. So, on August 26th, we get an update on Patreon from editor Caitlin. Hi everyone, Caitlin here. Today marks the first writing update where you'll get weekly updates on the progress Audra and I are making on the book. First off, I want to mention the Q&A that we posted yesterday. I answered questions over on TikTok for those interested. This weekend, we released the current iteration of Chapter 1. All chapters are subject to change as we continue working on the new draft, but I'm working closely with Audra to better establish the voice and improve the prose. Guardian is a post-apocalyptic society, and environmental themes are core to the story. That doesn't come across in the original edition, which was sorely lacking in descriptions of setting. On that note, here are some key elements I am focusing on for this round of edits. Characterization. The characters are the driving force of the book, but they were not properly developed in the first edition of the book. We'll be tackling character arcs, relationships, and making them three-dimensional. Setting. I want to ensure that readers understand the world in terms of its geography, politics, religion, magic, etc., and ensure that scenes are described. The first edition didn't take the time to reinforce world-building elements, and many scenes suffered from white room syndrome. Believability. Suspension of disbelief is crucial for speculative fiction, and the lack of logic/convenient timing of certain plot elements interferes with the reader's ability to, I'm assuming, immerse themselves in a story. There are, of course, more things we will need to tackle, but for now I want to ensure the story has a proper foundation. Readers should have an idea of what to expect by the end of Act 1. I've completed my first read-through of the novel and have discussed my thoughts with Audra. We are actively discussing her goals for this book so that we can find ways to achieve them. I want to deliver on what she's promised her readers, and I'm focused on fleshing things out. In terms of actual writing, Audra has completed an updated version of Chapter 1 and is currently working on drafting Chapter 2. Using my feedback, she's completed a general outline, and we are working on an in-depth outline so that we can plan out where and when she will be incorporating details about plot, character, setting, etc. Each chapter should have multiple functions, rather than just moving the plot forward. I'm pushing her to consider what character details she can show, what bits of world building she can incorporate, and how she can foreshadow various elements of the story. There's been a vast improvement between the first version of Chapter 1 and where we're at now, but there's still a long way to go. Additionally, this time around, Age of Scorpius will have beta readers. Audra failed to include proper beta readers for the first edition when beta feedback would have indicated the book was nowhere near ready. That's all for this week. By next week, we should have the next draft of Chapter 2 done, as well as a thorough outline. See you in September. So it really is kind of wild that a book with this much to work on was published. And the way she's speaking about the work being done, Caitlin seems like a co-author or like a mentor. She doesn't seem like just an editor. Because like the things she's saying are almost embarrassingly simple. Like the world building not actually doing anything to set the scene. And as a side note, world building is the thing she was criticizing Rebecca Yarros for. The revised Chapter 1 is currently available now to view on her Patreon. I am not personally going to be going over the actual content of the revisions beyond the first paragraph, but I will link to her Patreon if you'd like to read the whole thing. So here's the old Chapter 1. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods, the cursed forest I called home. Despite all the text describing Conviction Woods as eternally inhabitable, there were hundreds of wartime artifacts scattered amongst the forest grounds. The records had been altered to hide the truth of Guardian's last war, a truth that allowed the woods to protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundaries. And this is the new one. Since the foundation of Guardian, Conviction Woods was believed to be uninhabitable. Yet within its reach withered the ghosts of the last war and their rain-hushed cries. Evidence of human presence dwelled in the depths of the forest, where spears and shields rusted amongst flourishing sword ferns. When wolves howled with wartime grief, the trees whispered a silent truth. Conviction Woods wasn't always cursed, for if it had been, the spirits of its soldiers would not live beneath mangled roots grown from old blood. So, super small sample. I think there's been some improvement. Based on what a lot of people who have actually read the book have said, there's still a lot of work to be done even after this bit of editing, but I don't feel qualified to speak on that. While the prose is a little purple for me, I don't read fantasy, and I know that can be more common in fantasy when you're trying to set the scene in like a complicated world, so I'm not holding that against her. Now, something that I keep coming back to is just how much the art is not necessary. So I'm nitpicking maybe, but here's like something that was posted on her Patreon as like an art drop. It says, Assidious bighorn sheep. Native to Assidious, these giant sheep are used for long-distance mainland travel. Strong and capable of carrying heavy loads comfortably, the sheep have a temperament that makes them ideal, trustworthy travel companions. And you can see, like, this person is so little over here climbing this bighorn sheep. From the territory of Assidious hail the great bighorn sheep, renowned as the preferred companions for mainland travel. They may be visually a little too giant in this concept now that I look at this, though. I don't know why anyone needed this. Maybe these sheep are a huge part of the book. I don't know. I just haven't heard about them being talked about. And I did watch Reads with Rachel's, like, entire walkthrough of the book. Like, Audra paid someone to do this, to make sheep, for her fantasy book that isn't a book yet. The amount of art that's just all over her Patreon is just confusing. Why? Who asked for this? Obviously, she can do it if she wants to, but this feels like something that should wait until the series has an established fan base, and then you can do your art and your special editions and all of that. I don't know. So now I want to walk you through her website, because there is just a lot to look at. Okay, so here's the homepage. It's stunning. When we move the mouse down, it turns this little like zodiac wheel thing. We can see the background art is beautiful. In a world where Zodiac determines fate, she defies the stars. And then we have the two editions here. It does say coming December 2025, so that is definitely something that needs to be updated. Join the Patreon for exclusive behind the scenes content. Don't miss an update. And we can see here that this page was done by 5 different people. So we've got Elrose and Sarah did the web design. Bam, Marty, and Solly all did art on the page. I just think that's a lot of people to be doing this one thing. And let's see, read the book. Here You can see that she's still got these 2 additions here. This is one thing that I do want to say about this. If you are only listening, this page has a synopsis of the book, and then underneath it, it says, this highly anticipated YA fantasy debut by Audra Winter, now revised and expanded. It says some other stuff, but that's what I want to talk about. I don't like that phrasing because it makes it sound like this is like a fancy edition that was revised, expanded. I mean, yes, it is, but it shouldn't have needed to be revised and expanded from the first edition at this point. To me, that sounds like we've got deleted scenes, we've got, alternate ending. I don't know what people do, but it doesn't sound like what it is. It does feel just misleading to me. Okay, now we're gonna look at my favorite part of the website, which is meet the team. Because there is a team. From around the world of Guardian is a multimedia creative studio made up of 20 artists and creators. Founded by Audra Winter to support her breakout debut novel, The Age of Scorpius, we are so excited to bring Guardian to life across a variety of media going forward. Our fully independent company is run by creatives, not distant executives, and we are proudly and radically anti-AI in everything we make. Check out our team below, click through their socials to see more of their work, and to see what we're cooking up next for Guardian, check out our Patreon. So of course we got Audra up here first with her bio. I kind of want to read it to you because I'm a 22-year-old independent creator, author, entrepreneur, and naturalist based in Fort Collins, Colorado. For over 10 years, I have dedicated to becoming a story... Oh my God, we need a proofreader! I have dedicated to becoming a storyteller for Guardian by developing a young/new adult dystopian fantasy series debuting with The Age of Scorpius. My passion and love for Guardian drives my determination to represent the values of artistic kinship, imaginative collaboration, and creative freedom. Through investing the groundbreaking success of my novel back into my team, I established the World of Guardian LLC, with an aim to reinvent what it means to be an author. I am dedicated to pioneering a new avenue of publishing that prioritizes the creative freedom of independent artists by equalizing the voices of illustrators, writers, musicians, and animators. I enjoy writing the revolution movement and social justice while incorporating ecological themes along the way. I just think this as well, it has a lot of misleading verbiage, like through investing the groundbreaking success of my novel back into my team, it's like, sure, financially successful based on a book that was not ready to be a book. I just don't like all of that, because if someone just stumbled upon this with no context of like the situation, this would be not what they expected, what they ended up getting. So here we have, introducing everyone else. We have Caitlin, editor, Solly, art director, illustrator, Orsi, concept artist, illustrator, Elrose, project manager, illustrator, Mandy, concept artist, illustrator, Sarah, operations lead, Joe R., formatter, illustrator, Karen, character artist, designer, Bam, character artist, designer, Passed Away, animator, illustrator. What do we need an animator for? Bug, character artist. Luminanza, character artist. Martine, landscape artist. Marty, concept artist. Yikshan, landscape artists. Jelly, illustrator. Iori S., character artist. What the hell? Why do you need all these people? It just, I'm blown away. Obviously, we knew that this was something she had talked about. We knew she had a big team. But the fact that only 4 of her 17 team members have anything to do with writing the book. And I just want to say that I'm being a little bit generous with that as well, because I am including someone like Elrose, who says project manager and illustrator, as well as Joe R., who is the formatter, and illustrator. So I just think this is telling, and I don't know. You guys will have to let me know what you think too. It just, I don't know. This is the World of Guardian store, which has things you can't buy, but I get it. I'm glad she's not like allowing you to purchase stuff. But I'm honestly shocked that she is not selling merch or anything. Like that hasn't crossed her mind. Maybe it has. I don't know. Maybe that's the next thing we're going to see. Because it seems like she has just done everything to create this world without creating the world. If you catch my drift, I don't know. Those were really the biggest things I wanted you to see, that very extensive homepage and then her team, because it's just a lot. So the last thing that I want to share is a TikTok from Madison McMahon, who brings up some really good things to think about. And it's 8 minutes long, so I'm not going to include the whole video, but it will be linked down below if you'd like to watch it in its entirety.
I want to talk about Audra Winter and the tortured artist trope. Obviously, she is a real person. However, a lot of what she says in this video specifically stems out of our romanticization of that trope. Hear me out. Throughout the video, she talks about how poor her mental health has been because of all of this, which I am very empathetic to. I can only imagine how hard it is to have your first book not be received well and be experiencing this also publicly. However, part of her defense against this criticism, part of her support for why she is going to make this book in this world even better than it was, than what people weren't liking, is she says she eats, sleeps, and breathes this book. She thinks about it 24/7. She writes 3 hours a day. She meets with her team 3 hours in the morning, 4 hours at night, all throughout the day. It is her entire world. And she goes so far as to say, it is my life, and not in a metaphoric sort of way. She has tied it multiple times throughout the video, you can watch it yourself, to the fact that it is her will to live. Those are her words. Because of the way we have viewed tortured artists as a society, like Vincent van Gogh, Emily Dickinson, artists who suffer for their craft, artists who live in isolation and only think and do their work, I genuinely think she is using that mentality as proof that she is a good artist. She cares about this. She wants to give you the best product. The extent in which she is talking about it affecting her, and the time that she is talking about spending thinking about this book, is not conducive to good art, and it concerns me that she thinks that it is. And writers hate to hear this. I hated to hear this, but you need to live life in order to write about it. I don't care that it's a fantasy world, you know what I mean. These ideas don't come from outer space, even if they are set in outer space. Again, another hard one to swallow for artists specifically, but writing is a kind of sport. You have to think about it like a sport, because guess what? You can't practice your sport 24/7. Why? Because your body's gonna fail. And that is not a shortcoming on your part. It is the fact that you literally can't do that. And I keep seeing Audra Winter try to girl boss her way out of this situation. No, you need to rest. And that is not defeat. Would you say an athlete is defeated because they need to take a break after working out for 6 hours? After sustaining an injury? No, and writing works the same way. It gets to a point where you're I know you want to keep writing. You're at hour 4 for that day. However, you have to accept that at some point you're just making it worse. And you're putting yourself through all this suffering that you don't need to. And I feel like she thinks it's a sign of being a good artist is the fact that she is suffering and is willing to sacrifice herself for her craft. That is not the sign of a good artist. That is a sign of someone who is unwell. And that's not a read or anything. That is coming from a genuine place, and I'm not trying to overstep. I'm not trying to be a therapist. I've been there. I've been this book is my entire life. It's not. It can be important to you. It is not your entire life. And that's okay. That is not a shortcoming on you as an artist. That doesn't mean you're not dedicated to your craft enough. It means you're an actual human person who needs to take care of themselves. And that is not girl boss to take care of yourself. And also, that's how you take care of your art, by stepping away from it when you realize you are actively doing it harm, by sacrificing all of yourselves into it. And that's what I really want this author to understand, because as much as they're trying to take accountability and do all these revisions and stuff, I truly do not feel like they are getting the point across, because all of their conclusions have been oh yes, I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to read the comments anymore. No, that was not the lesson. The lesson was to like learn to take constructive feedback and not be like living in fear because of that feedback. Just because people don't like your work doesn't mean they don't like you as a person. And I think she's really gotten the two mixed up between her work and herself as a person, which is such a tortured artist trope thing. Coming into your own as a writer is realizing that like rejecting a draft, putting down a project, which I don't think she's going to do, and I don't think she should do necessarily, that is not wasting your time. Any time spent writing, spent pushing yourself as a writer, mentally, not physically, stepping out of your comfort zone, not spending 8 hours writing, is not time wasted. And also, all that suffering you've endured, all this time you've spent on it, doesn't equate to a good product. And I truly think that's what she's gotten confused, is that she spent all this time on it, 10 years theoretically, because she started it when she was 12, therefore it must be so good. She suffered so much, putting so much of herself into it, therefore it must be good. I truly, truly, truly want this woman to hear this, not this video specifically, but come to this conclusion, because not only is she actively hurting herself mentally, physically, she says she's not eating, she's also hurting her audience and other people, because what she's saying is incredibly manipulative and saying like, my will to live is tied to this book, I'm not eating because of all the stuff you guys have said. And I really hate to say it because I know it's gonna sting, but she's hurting her characters, she's hurting her world, she's hurting her story too. And any artist, a writer who hears that is like, ouch, I care about these characters and I care about this world so much. Trust me, I've been there. But I had to have enough trust in myself, in my skill, that I could take a break from it and come back and it could be better. I wish her nothing but the best, and I really hope I didn't overstep in any capacity. If I did, that's on me and I'm sorry. Her video talks about how she wants indie authors to support one another, and sometimes supporting one another is telling other people the hard truths that you've learned. The ones that are hard to hear and hard to do, but so worth it.
I agree that her fixation on this isn't healthy, and I do think the tortured artist thing is glamorized by a lot of people. I know that her neurodivergence is a factor in how much she obsesses over her story, and I will not pretend to know what that feels like, but it is still objectively not healthy to have it attached to her will to live, and yes, those are her own words. And whether or not it's her intention, I think it's, for lack of a better term, manipulative, to basically make people feel like if they critique your book that it's a personal attack just because she sees the book as part of who she is. So I will continue to update on Audra when there are new things to say. I'm hopeful that she's trending in the right direction, but I think she is still missing the point on a lot of people's criticisms, and it will be interesting to see how this just all continues to unfold. If you have read the new chapter 1, let me know what you thought of it, especially compared to the old one. I didn't read it. Anyways, today our indie author is Aurora Dimitri, an author and elementary school teacher from North Dakota. She writes a lot of dark horror and thriller novels that include a lot of bisexuals, but not everything is full of horror. One of her young adult series, the Aughts Boys books, is a non-linear set of companion novels following teenagers in the early aughts as they navigate figuring themselves and life out. I'm not a boy, but relatable. I came of age in the early aughts. So down in the description is a link to Aurora's YouTube channel, along with where you can purchase her books if they sound like something you'd enjoy. Indie authors are a vital part of the bookish community, so make sure to show your support wherever you can, even if that just means a follow on social media. If you'd like to be featured in my indie author spotlight, I have a form linked in the description. If you did like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more just like it, make sure you are subscribed. I do also have a Patreon if you are interested in supporting me over there, and there is a free tier. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!